Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Freely Nourished, the podcast that empowers you to break the cycle of dieting by teaching you to nourish your body well. I'm your host, registered dietitian. Whoops, bumped my camera. Registered dietitian Erin Casey, and I am also the owner of New You Nutrition Counseling, where we believe that you can reach any of your health goals at just about any body size. So you are ready to let go of that toxic cycle of dieting, i.e., trying to make your body smaller in an effort to make your body healthier. Um, Join us. We have lots of ways for you to get involved. We have our tried and true one-on-one counseling, which is far and away our most popular option. It's also our most effective option because we are basically taking everything you need and you want in your exact situation and giving you tailor-made recommendations for you. One of the biggest reasons diets don't work is because they try to take one small piece of information that applies to one small piece of, or one small percentage of people, and they apply it broadly to everyone. So we don't do that. We take you, we take your habits, we take your preferences, we take your schedule, we take your barriers, your boundaries, etc., all into consideration. And then we come up with a plan that will work for you. We also don't just give you a meal plan. We coach you through it. We walk you through the how to get it done. So again, if you are ready to let go of restriction and dieting and fear around food and embrace a loving and positive relationship with food and your body, come find us. One-on-one counseling is one option. We also have lots of digital options as well. They are under the self-paced courses tab on our website. I'll link it below. But those are lots of options of kind of, it's more generic advice, which is also why it's cheaper. So if you are looking for kind of a more affordable option for things that are kind of common questions, just the basics of like how to get started, that's a really good place to go. If you are not sure, so if you're not sure kind of where what you need and where to find it kind of in our realm of services, and you want to just kind of sit down and talk with somebody about it, book a discovery call. It's also available on the website. I will also link it below. But that is just a quick 15-minute call. It is, no strings attached, no expectations. It's more of just you tell us what you want or what you're looking for, and we tell you what we offer. And basically, we just kind of see, do the stars align? Is anything on our product list an appropriate match for you? And you get to decide too, is this what I'm actually looking for or not? It's totally free. We will not pester you after the call if you do not choose to purchase any of our products. And we're not going to be salesman like or pushy. We genuinely want to help the people that want the help we have to offer. So we're not looking to market to everybody, and that's fine. If what we offer is not for you, totally fine. You never have to talk to any of us again. But if it's something that you feel like would benefit you, great. Let's have the conversation. Um, so all of that again linked below, but book a discovery call if you're ever not sure. It's a quick 15-minute call. No issues, no nothing. It's just straight up, this is what I want. Do you do it? Do you not? So that's what we have to offer. Today, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit. This is something that I get a decent amount of questions about. So I kind of finally um, decided to build a podcast based on it, is how to make vegetables taste good, right? So I think a lot of people, most of us know that like vegetables are kind of like an important part of our diet. And the reasons why we maybe don't eat as many as we should is taste preference is definitely a big factor of it, but also just like the time it takes to prepare them. So even if you're somebody who like, I love vegetables, but you find that you don't eat enough of them because you just don't take the time to prepare them, then this is for you too. It is also for anybody who, like, maybe you personally love vegetables, but people who you create food for, i.e., your kids, your spouse, maybe parents if you're taking care of them, other people in your household for whom you are still responsible for making food, maybe they don't love them. And very often I hear, particularly parents, but others as well, telling me, I would make this if it were for myself, but my family won't eat it. And I don't want to make two different meals. So this is also for you. So this is a way to, these are easy ways to add in veggies in particular, and ways to ways to make it where you're not necessarily feeling like you're having to make two meals. So they're kind of like either an add-on, but it's also ways to make them taste better so that like you may like them better and or your family members may like them better. So let's get started. I wanted to start by just kind of giving you the general recommendations of how many vegetables you should be eating in a day anyway, because I think this is also a big source of confusion for folks. One of a lot of people think like, oh, like there's supposed to be a vegetable at like every meal, or like you need to have like, 5 servings a day or something like that. And you don't. The recommendation is for fruits and vegetables combined. So we're not going to talk a whole lot about fruit today just because like there's not a lot. I mean, you can cook fruit, but most people just eat fruit as it is and either like they don't. There's not a whole lot of doctoring it up, so to speak. But between fruits and vegetables, they're actually nutritionally very similar. So yes, fruit does have more sugar. uh, if you are somebody who's kind of like, well, sugar is a bad thing, um, go listen to my podcast from a couple episodes ago about sugar addiction. Sugar is not bad for you. Definitely the sugar in fruit is not bad for you. If you are somebody who has, diabetes or insulin resistance or something where you do have to be aware of how many carbs you're eating, one, not all carbs are sugar, but um, that then this you have to pay attention to it, but it's still not bad, if that makes sense. So don't feel like you can't eat fruit or any vegetables for that matter, just because there's some carb content there. There's very much still for you. It's still very much healthy food, but don't feel like you can't eat it. I can do another episode on like myths around carbs and fruits, but for now, just know that fruits and vegetables are very similar nutritionally. They both have tons of fiber. They both are going to have lots of different vitamins and minerals. Those are called micronutrients. Um, and they're also going to have, like potassium and other things that are good for us. When it comes to how much you're supposed to have, I usually tell people 5 servings a day split between the two. So if that means 5 servings of vegetables, great, then that's 5 servings of vegetables. If that means 5 servings of fruit, great, that's 5 servings of fruit. If it is a split between the two, so most people do like a split between the two. So the goal is 5, but ideally you can get to 3. So 3 to 5 servings per day, somewhere somehow split between fruits and vegetables. That's the goal. I also want to clarify though, what is a serving, right? For fruit, it's a little bit easier because it's kind of, you think about things like an apple, a banana, an orange, like a big navel orange, the little cuties. I would say like 2 to 3 of those are a serving, but like one navel orange is a serving. So the fruit is kind of like whatever the fruit is, that's a serving. If it's something like, strawberries or grapes or cherries or whatever, something that's kind of like individual, even cut up like melons and things like that, about a cup, which is usually about the size of your fist, that's going to be a serving. So fruit's pretty easy. It's either a cup or the whole fruit, so to speak. Veggies, it's a little different. Generally speaking, half a cup of cooked veggies or a cup of raw veggies is what's going to be a serving. The difference is the water. So when we cook our vegetables, which we'll get into in just a second, we're going to lose water, which means that like they condense in size. So, half a cup of cooked broccoli versus a cup of raw broccoli. When we are doing things like salad, greens, and stuff like that, it is actually 2 cups as a serving. But that said, right, if we have a big salad that's like, 2 cups worth of greens, we add tomatoes and carrots and cucumbers and other stuff on it, like that may be 3 servings of vegetables right there, just in one salad. Same goes for things, like cooked broccoli, for example. I know very few people who actually eat a half a cup of cooked broccoli. Most people are eating a cup or more with their meal. So just kind of keep in mind, that's great, do that, but also know that that whole cup of broccoli is actually 2 servings. So if your goal is somewhere between 3 and 5 servings total, you're halfway there with just the cup of broccoli, and that might kind of something you consider like 1 serving, so to speak, because it's one instance that you're eating it. So I just want to be kind of clear that the goal is 3 to 5 servings per day combined between fruits and vegetables. And that's the goal, right? Like something is better than nothing. It does not matter. I would rather you eat a banana a day and like not eat any other vegetables than to not eat that banana, right? Like that's still providing you benefit. And just kind of, the portion sizes are maybe a little bit smaller than you realize. So you might actually be doing better than you think you are. Um, So that's the goal. And I've done, several podcasts on kind of like how to get there. But if the barrier is taste, right? If the barrier is I don't love it, I want you to think about how we are preparing these vegetables. There are some out there who would, recommend, starting with like sweeter things like carrots and sweet potatoes, bell peppers and the like, and kind of transitioning into like the more bitter things like Brussels sprouts and asparagus and things like that. That's certainly a strategy you can try. To be perfectly honest, um, that's not something that I find is particularly helpful for folks in practice. Because honestly, it's more than just like the flavor in the vegetable that contributes to it. It is also like the texture, it's what you eat it with, it's pairings, it's things like that. So I think what I would like to do is kind of walk you through the kind of more convoluted way of doing it. But just know that that option is out there as well. Um, and the first thing I always tell people to do is, if you are somebody who like, swears up and down, you don't like vegetables, and you don't like the taste of them, you don't like the smell of them. My question is, how have you had them prepared? Because often the answer is like, oh, well, like some kind of like mushy steamed variety, whether that was what was served to you as a child, whether that's what you've experienced in a restaurant, what you had like friends or roommates or whatever, like that's an okay way to make vegetables, but it's definitely not the most delicious. And I will die on that hill that like steaming your vegetables while healthy is not the most delicious way to make them, period. It never will be. I mean, is it sometimes the fastest, the easiest? Yeah, whatever. That's not the point. The point is if you're going for taste, you want what's called a dry preparation method. So we have dry cooking methods and we have wet cooking methods. Wet cooking methods obviously involve some type of liquid, typically a broth, or in the case of like steaming water. So those are going to be things like boiling, steaming, um, to an extent, kind of like sauteing, but sauteing really involves more of like a fat or an oil. So I recommend dry preparation methods, particularly if the texture is what is getting you. So if like you're just used to broccoli that has been mushy or carrots that like were canned, um, those are mushy things, and canning is also another a wet preparation method. We'll get to that in a minute. Try dry prep methods. So those are going to be things like roasting, baking, air frying, etc. Um, Sauteing is probably kind of the hybrid between the two. So roasting is going to involve an oil, whatever seasonings you want, and then an oven. That oven can also be your air fryer. And frankly, if you have an air fryer, I recommend you use it. It's a lot faster, a lot easier, um, and a lot less mess to clean up as well. Things translate very well into the air fryer. It's also quicker. Um, and so roasting, sauteing, you can add a little bit of fat to a pan. Um, and just, like whether it's oil or butter or what have you. And then you kind of just cook the veggies in there until they're tender. It is kind of a hybrid. It's more of a moist cooking method than roasting and things like that, but it's still um, relatively dry relative to like steaming, boiling, canning, etc. The other thing I tell people is don't be afraid of salt. And this goes for whether you're using a dry cook or a moist cook. Don't be afraid of salt and seasonings in general. So I think we've all kind of like somehow got it in our head that like salt is bad for us. And unless your kidneys are already actively failing, it's not. It's we want to be cognizant of like how much sodium we're taking in over time, but the amount of salt that you're adding in your food that you're cooking is generally not the problem, right? It's food that we eat out, it's foods that we eat in packages. It's also the fact that we don't drink enough water to offset the sodium that we're taking in. We don't eat enough potassium, i.e., fruits and vegetables, to offset the sodium that we're taking in. It is usually not the salt that we're adding in cooking. So don't take the salt away from your cooking, because you take the salt away from your cooking, you take away the joy. Um, so don't be afraid of salt. Um, I think also people kind of get in their head like, oh my gosh, a teaspoon of salt has like 2,000 milligrams of sodium. It does, but you're not eating the whole teaspoon at one time. You're putting the whole teaspoon in one dish. So don't be afraid of salt or seasoning for of any variety for that matter. Get creative with it. Salt and pepper are bare minimum requirements, but adding any kind of garlic, paprika, herbs like rosemary, thyme, like those kinds of things. Get fancy with it. Generally speaking, herbs and spices tend to taste like they smell. So if you smell it, your olfactory and your taste receptors are actually very closely linked to each other, right at the back of like your throat, kind of between your nose and your throat. Um, and for that reason, we can like often like taste things that we can smell, and vice versa. So when you just take a whiff of something, kind of like, I don't know whether or not to add this. One, get adventurous, like add it anyway. But also, like if you take a whiff of it, that smell is also going to be kind of what the flavor is that you can expect. So to kind of to play with it in that sense. The other thing not to be afraid of is fat. So fat and salt are going to add flavor, and very often, in addition to like steaming or boiling vegetables and making them mushy and sad, we are not properly seasoning them. So that part of that is salt, which we just talked about, but the other part is fat. Don't be afraid to add things like butter or oil, to give it that flavor, right? Like those things, yes, are going to add calories, but ultimately, I am more concerned, and I don't care what your health goals are, I am more concerned about that vegetable getting in. That Brussels sprout is packing more nutrition than you could ever lose by avoiding salt or fat, right? Like, yes, you are adding calories. No, it is not a significant amount, and no, it is not bad for you. So don't be afraid to doctor it up. Um, when it comes to the whole debate between, like oils versus butter versus trans fats, etc., just to be clear, trans fats do not exist in foods anymore. There will be lots of foods that you see on the shelves that say like trans fat free, and they are, but that's also just a marketing ploy. Like, don't let that fool you into thinking that trans fats actually exist in foods anymore. They don't. Trans fats, if you're not familiar, is kind of the original margarine, like back in the 50s when we realized, oh shit, everybody's dying from heart attacks because we're eating like bacon and sausage and eggs every single day. So let's like make this like non-saturated fat butter thing called margarine. That was trans fats. We then learned a couple of decades later that the trans fats were actually worse for you than the original. Um, and the FDA mandated that they take that no food companies use trans fats. So trans fats don't exist anymore. So that is not a risk. So the margarine and the products that you see on the oil blends, butter combinations, things like that, those don't contain trans fats and like never will again because we know that those are dangerous. So the idea that regular butter is better for you than like some of the alternative products, it's not. But the alternative products are perfectly fine too. It's truly just a taste preference of whatever you prefer to eat. Um, Whether it is like a butter or an oil, um, things like that. So butter and things that come from animals. So what I always tell people is if you're trying to figure out what kind of fat it is, whether it's a good fat or a bad fat, good fat comes from plants, and fish. So things like avocados, nuts, seeds, peanut butter, um, any of like your fish varieties, so like tuna and salmon, things like that. Those are all like healthy fats. The saturated fats, which are the unhealthy fats, those come from animal products. So butter is one of them, but they also things like cheese, fattier meats, etc. The way I always tell people to think about it is like, okay, if you're not sure which, is the thing you're looking at, did it at one point have feet? If it had feet, the fat in it is saturated fat. Um, so that means that's kind of the more like artery clogging, so to speak, fat. It doesn't, it's not as bad as people kind of think it is sometimes, but that's the one that's a little bit more dangerous. If it did not have feet, it comes from a plant or a fish, and that means that it's actually a good fat. And it doesn't matter. Like, there's a whole tirade of people going on about like sunflower oil versus avocado oil versus vegetable oil. Like all of those oils are fine. It doesn't matter. Like vegetable oil is fine, corn oil is fine, canola oil is fine. Like all of them are fine. Um, some of them, like olive, avocado, etc., have a little bit more antioxidant power, but that doesn't mean that the others are harmful or bad. They're not. Um, and we also don't really have evidence to suggest that the in the doses people use cooking, that the ones like olive oil, etc., um, olive oil, avocado, etc., we don't have good evidence to suggest that they really do any have any anti-inflammatory function in the doses that people eat them. Um, so there's that too. So I always tell people go for flavor. If you want the flavor of olive oil is going to have a distinct flavor. So if you want that flavor, then use olive oil. If you don't want that flavor, use something that's more neutral, like a vegetable canola, corn oil. Those are going to be your more neutral ones. Um, Things like avocado and grapeseed and things like that, they tend to be a little bit more mild in their flavor, um, but they're also significantly more expensive. Um, so again, it's a taste preference, it's a cost preference, but just know that they're all totally valid options. And when you are using them to roast or saute or whatever your veggies, they're going to give you different results, but don't be afraid to use any of them. So fat and salt, definitely use them. Go for a dry cook, especially if texture is an issue for you. If texture is not so much the issue and you're just looking for flavor, then just don't be afraid to utilize the flavors that you like. Um, if you really have a hard time getting past like the vegetableiness of it, right? A lot of people that are like, yeah, like I cooked it right, and other people really like it and they say it tastes really good, but like I just don't like it. I just can't get past that flavor. First of all, you are not broken. Um, there's a lot that we kind of dismiss in the field of nutrition as just kind of like quote unquote picky eating. And it's not picky eating. Like there are real reasons, especially anybody who's on like the autism spectrum. Like there's a lot more that goes into like how your brain processes taste and how your brain processes food coming in compared to the average person. We've been lazy, kind of like the whole BMI argument, right? Like we've been lazy and we've not really explored all of those avenues because we've just kind of labeled it as like picky eating and moved on. That is a huge underservice to the population. We don't have the data, but what we do know is that there's a very different way that your brain processes foods. And when you talk to people who not even just people who are on the spectrum, but there's also things like RFID and other types of eating disorders where it's very different from a food preference. It is, or even like a lack of adventureness or anything like that. It is very much a like, it feels like somebody is actively like ripping your teeth out to eat certain foods because of texture, because of flavor, sometimes because of colors. Um, so those are things that like if you are struggling with that, I highly encourage you to work with a dietitian. I'm definitely certified in RFID and things of that nature. But I also can refer you out to providers in your area as well if you're looking for insurance coverage. A lot of times it's significantly deeper than just like picky eating. So if it's something where it's just like something viscerally in you does not feel well when you eat certain foods, whether it's vegetables or not, reach out because there's definitely help for you, and ways to kind of change some of those foods to where you're maybe able to get the nutritional value, but the texture is different, the color is different, it's mixed in with other things in different ways. There's also ways to kind of help desensitize your reaction to that in a systemic way, and in a controlled environment. So you're not like at Thanksgiving dinner having to like refuse everything or just having to sit there and basically feel like somebody is like plucking your eyeballs out with a fork. There are ways to kind of cope with those reactions, in a more effective way and kind of desensitize your brain to them. Um, but I just want to put that out there because I think it's something that um, we don't talk about enough because it's just labeled as like picky eating and like as everything in healthcare, it's like the patient's the problem when the reality is you're not the problem at all and we're just being lazy and not exploring it. Um, that said, if outside of those extreme examples, you can try dry preparation methods, add salt, add fat, if you don't have a visceral reaction, but you're still just like, I cannot make myself eat this, or I just don't want to, right? Um, there are ways to kind of to hide them, right? And this is also really helpful if you have kids who maybe just like the flavor, like if they see roasted broccoli, they don't care that it was prepared in a different way, and they don't care that it has salt and butter on it. They care that it looks like broccoli, and the last time they ate broccoli, they didn't like it, or they don't want to try broccoli, or whatever, right? And it's just not worth World War III. This is where you can hide things. So blending them up into sauces is a really, really great way. So things like, take things like spaghetti sauce. It's not going to work great in like a white sauce, right? But any type of sauce, whether it is like, some type of like tikka masala, if it's um, a spaghetti sauce, like anything where you kind of got like that creamy texture to it. Cooking up yeah, and you can prep them any which way because they're going to take on the flavor of the sauce. So honestly, like the microwavable like steamer bags are really, really great. You can also do canned vegetables. You can actually chop them up and like put them in the sauce if you want. But that said, like the texture maybe a giveaway. Um, but you could literally blend it, like throw it in a blender, blend it all up, and then add it into your sauce. That can be a really great way to kind of hide things. Also, things like casseroles and the like, where again, like the smaller you cut it up, the less visible it's going to be. But sometimes we're agreeable to broccoli that is covered in cheese, and things like that in a casserole dish versus just broccoli sitting on the plate. And I always tell people too, if it's not so much you, it's the kids that you're trying to get them to eat it. I always tell people kids need an exposure to something at least 12 times to even really accept it, which is exhausting and it's a lot of work. But just the way our brains interpret new information, it's truly 12 times before that food necessarily feels safe. So even if you are making broccoli for yourself and you just have it visibly on the table, or salad, or whatever it is, that is going to be an exposure to that child. Hearing, as we all know, children generally don't want to do things that they like know they're supposed to, and like if you're harping at them like you have to eat your broccoli, you have to try it, as much as you can, keep on a poker face. So you'd be like, yeah, there's broccoli there, try to remain as neutral as you can about it. You can try the broccoli, you could not try the broccoli. Maybe this time, like, just take a bite, just see what you like it. If you don't like it, you can spit it out. That's no big deal. And you repeatedly having it present and available 12 times in a row will actually make the kid more likely to accept it. Um, it doesn't always work. Doesn't mean they're going to like everything, but that's just kind of your best bet. Just because they don't like it the first time or the second time or even the third time, keep trying. And again, have it available. You're gonna, make it vegetables that you want to eat and things like that. Um, but keep it as neutral as possible and keep presenting it as an option. You'd be surprised how open it can be kind of after time and time again. Again, it's kind of like that desensitization. They're processing it. Okay, this broccoli is safe. It's not going to bite me. Okay, mom likes it, dad likes it. Like, okay, I'll give it a whirl. So don't be afraid to keep presenting options even if they have been turned down in the past. Um, Variant sauces, variant casseroles. Um, if you, whether it's you or even your kids, um, if it is, kids in particular, I always tell people get as much buy-in from them as you can in terms of how it's prepared, in terms of um, what it's going to taste like and things like that. Um, Sometimes, like for little kids, you may not get a whole lot, but for kids that are older, you might kind of be like, okay, like we're going to try roasting broccoli because this dietitian on the internet said that roasting broccoli is going to taste better. Do you want to help me do it? They can pull apart the broccoli stalks. I've had kids as young as 9 using a chef's knife before. So I mean, like, let them help you in the kitchen. The more they're involved in it, the more buy-in you have, the more likely they're going to be to accept it or at least give it a try. They still may not like broccoli. There's some people who just don't like it, and that's fine. Um, but it's just kind of the more you can get them involved in both the decision making as well as the actual execution of it, the more buy-in they're going to have, and the more inclined they're going to be to try it. Um, and another strategy, whether it's for you, for a child, is to just try one new vegetable per week. Some people find that it's really helpful rather than being like, "Oh, I just need to eat more vegetables." If there are vegetables you know you don't like, don't start with those. Start with vegetables that are unknown, right? Don't feel like you have to buy a whole bunch of them. Just buy one serving of whatever vegetable you want to try. And you maybe enough to try it like two different times or something like that. But it doesn't have to be elaborate. And just try it. Just like that's your goal each week. It's just kind of work your way through several different vegetables, maybe a couple of different preparation methods in each, until you kind of have a repertoire of like, okay, like turns out I don't like broccoli, but man, I love sweet potatoes. Like those are great. Or, spinach, not my jam, but turns out like you throw some romaine lettuce with Caesar dressing on it and I'm all about it. So play with it. Feel free to play with it, but also break it down into manageable chunks. So it's not like I'm trying like three different recipes every single week. Just one new vegetable every week, and the rest of your food is food that you know you like. And permission, same as with a child. If you give it a whirl, if you don't like it, spit it out, and like that's the end of that. Um, Adults, I will say the repeated exposure thing tends to not work with adults. With adults, we kind of know what we like, what we don't like, and it doesn't tend to change as much as it does with kids. Um, I would also say that, not all salads are created equally. So there's lots that you can do with salads to make them kind of what you want. Some people, don't particularly care for like iceberg lettuce. Some people don't like the like more tender greens and they like the iceberg lettuce. You could also have salads kind of based on cabbage. You have all kinds of options for dressings. Um, basically get it to a point where it doesn't even look or taste like a salad. That is okay. Again, we can add salt, we can add fat. That applies to salads too. A salad covered in ranch dressing is still a salad. You're still, all of the good stuff is still there, and you're not negating it by putting, you know, herb dusted buttermilk, i.e. ranch. Like it's all of that is still, it's still there. I will say if it is like the bitterness of like the greens that is getting you, baby greens, so like baby spinach, baby kale, kind of those more tender lettuces are going to be a lot milder in flavor. That said, they also have a kind of a more tender texture. They're not going to be as crunchy as say like an iceberg or something like that. So just kind of think about what it is that you think is bothering you. Is it the taste? Is it the texture? And those can kind of get you pretty far. Um, so that's it. That's kind of my rundown of things to try. Dry cooking methods over moist. Don't be afraid of salt. Don't be afraid of fat. Definitely feel free to kind of blend things in. If you need to bury it in, cheese or a casserole or something like that. Um, Repeated exposures if you have kids, not necessarily repeated trials, but like repeated, like the broccoli is present on the table kind of exposures. And maybe it's present on their plate. And maybe they eat it, maybe they don't. I'm not big on forcing kids to eat things. That just doesn't tend to create a great one, doesn't tend to improve their intake, but it also doesn't create a very good relationship with food down the line. So rather, just kind of having a neutral stance of like, it's there, try it if you want, don't if you want. If you don't like it, you have permission to not eat the rest or spit it out or what have you. But continuing those exposures. If you're an adult, they're likely after one or two exposures, even if you're trying different prep methods, if you just don't like it, you just don't like it. But that said, preparation method can make a big difference. Um, I, for one, will not eat a boiled Brussels sprout. Don't put it anywhere near me. But you like roast those things and I will gobble them up. So don't be afraid to try new things. Try one new one every week. That can be a really easy option. And feel free to play with salads. Don't feel like salads are just kind of lettuce, tomato, and that's it. There's lots of options. You can add croutons, you can add seeds, you can add fruit if you want. All kinds of different types of cheeses. There's it's endless variety, like those little sesame noodles. The salad kits are actually kind of a nice way to start there if you want to kind of start with it, because they kind of have everything kind of the perfect balance as well. Um, so that's it. I will see you all next time. And like I said, if any of this is like, hey, this sounds really great, but like you gave me so many ideas and I'm not sure where this applies to me, uh, book a discovery call. Um, talk to me about it, whether it's for you, your family, what have you. We can certainly troubleshoot it in 15 minutes, but if it's something that you feel like you need more kind of in-depth counseling on, then do that. If you're somebody who like all of this sounds great and it sounds like something you want to accomplish, but you are having that visceral reaction of like, I feel like I'm pulling my hair out when I even like look at, any type of vegetables. That may be a little bit deeper than just you being a picky eater, and that might be worth taking a look at as well. So again, book a discovery call. I can also pretty easily assess whether or not that is going on. Um, and we can kind of come up with a plan from there to either help desensitize that reaction, to help find ways that are going to be beneficial for you, whether it's changing textures, flavors, colors, etc. But certainly don't feel like you have to walk through that alone. You don't. None of this is anything you have to walk through alone. We are here to help. And with that, I will leave you all, and I will see you next time. I hope you have a great rest of your week.